Greetings from social isolation land. This is Kai Hagen. I'm here with three guests that I'll introduce in a moment. This is part of a series of videos I've been planning to do. You may have seen the first one that I did talking with Ken Oldham of the United Way and what they're doing in the context of our current crisis and how it's affecting the poorest and most vulnerable among us and what the United Way is doing to address that. It's understandable that a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to the impact of our most vulnerable population, certainly in terms of public health, but also in terms of the impacts in food banks and food availability, food security, housing issues, concerns about people keeping or having lost their jobs, basically just trying to keep it together for themselves and their family. But this is affecting every part of our community. And today I wanted to bring in some folks who have a lot of knowledge and experience to talk about specifically the effect right now. Obviously, this is going to unfold for a long time, play out in ways we can't fully expect, but the effect that it's having on the arts, or specifically the performing arts and theater companies in our community. This is an important part of our culture, and we're very lucky in Frederick County to have an extraordinary range of theatrical options, performing arts for kids, for adults, professional and amateur alike. And it's a tremendous asset. We want to make sure that when we come out of the other end of this, that's still an important and thriving part of our community. But these things are not necessarily going to happen automatically. So I have three guests with me today that I wanted to have a conversation with about exactly that issues. And at the end, we'll list some links and any other way you can contact them or ways you might be able to help. First, I've got Tad James. A lot of you are familiar with Tad, I'm sure. He's one of the founders and the producing artistic director of the Maryland Ensemble Theatre, or otherwise known as the Met. The Met houses the main stage theater, family theater called the Fun Company, comedy performances like the Comedy Pigs, Oak Crit, the annual classes through the Ensemble Theater, and an after-school arts and education program for regional, elementary, and middle schools. In addition, the Met has an educational program for veterans, and our first Met Generations program connected with our retired community in Frederick County. Tad is also the program manager for theater at Frederick Community College and holds a BFA in acting from West Virginia University and a master's degree from Goucher's College in Arts Administration and the University of Kent in Canterbury, England for ensemble practice and group dynamics. I'd say in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm hoping that this is the order you'll see it all in, and it'll stay this way, is Christine Mosere. Am I pronouncing that right, Christine? Mosere?
Sorry, my phone. Yes, Mosere,
okay.
Christine Mosere.
Okay, thank you. I should have asked beforehand, but I don't want to pronounce anybody's name wrong. I've known Christine for a while, even if I'm not 100% clear on how to pronounce her last name. But she moved to Frederick 4 years ago after working exclusively as an actor and director in New York City for 15 years. She also spent some time in Seattle before coming here, where she worked for the award-winning regional theater called Book It Repertory Theater. She is thrilled, and I know that is true, to be in Frederick and considers it her forever home, and has for a while already. She fell in love with the place, and we all can appreciate that. You may have seen her perform in town in Free Range Humans' production of Always Patsy Cline. I did, and it was outstanding. And perhaps in last summer's Midsummer Night's Dream in the Frederick Shakespeare Festival, produced by her company, the Endangered Species Project. She's an actor, director, nonprofit consultant, and artistic director of said mentioned Endangered Species Theatre Project, and an up-and-coming professional theater in Frederick City, and Frederick County. And then we have Elizabeth Lucas. Elizabeth is a film and stage director, producer, and creative entrepreneur, and the founder of Free Range Humans, a 2-year company doing immersive theatrical work in Frederick. She landed in Frederick as the first creative director of the New Spire Arts after 15 years also in New York City. You guys spent the same amount of time there, where she was the founder of the New York Musical Theater Festival. made 3 award-winning feature films, and directed Tony-winning talent from New York to Alaska. On April
That was a
1st,
nice trip.
yeah, on April 1st, she was slated to open Free Range Kids, a performing arts, education, and production space in the Francis Scott Key Mall. Obviously, we know what happened to that for now. Free Range Humans was also slated to produce a concert reading of the Broadway-bound new musical Triangle by the songwriters for The Marvelous Miss Maisel, which, by the way, my wife and I love. And to participate in the Frederick Shakespeare Festival with the musical adaptation of As You Like It, one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. The mission of Free Range Humans redefines the limits of theatrical experience by immersing audiences in participation in stories and locations that fire the imagination, celebrate the human search for meaning, and awaken our sense of communal storytelling through exhilarating productions and inspirational creator-based performing arts education accessible to all. That's quite a mission statement. Full disclosure, my wife and I have been season ticket holders at the Met for years, and I did serve a while back on a development committee for the Met. And of course, I attend performances by Free Range Humans, etc., and other local theaters as often as we can. With that, I hope that that's most of the talking that I'm going to be doing, except for a few questions. But I wanted you to appreciate the breadth and depth of the experience of the folks that we have here. So first, if each of you could just take a minute or two, maybe in the order I introduced you, whatever order works for you, just to share some initial thoughts about how things are going right now. What we'll get into more depth, but you know, obviously this was has shaken up everything, and all that theater work, as Elizabeth listed, that what was planned, the shows at the Met, et cetera, are not happening, and we don't know what's going to happen. How are things going right now? Ted, you want to start?
Yeah, you know, it's tough. It's a big question mark. We made the call in mid-March to close our theater doors for the safety of our artists and our community, and then by Monday is when the order from the governor came to that people assembling of 250 or less or fewer, and then later that week it was below that. So we know that our call was in good shape, but it's still big question mark. We're paying overhead, we're paying rent on a space, we're paying salaries on people that aren't working right now. So it's tough, and we don't know exactly how it's all going to work out. We know that in the meantime, we're trying to keep ourselves busy. We have a lot of different projects going on virtually. We've had some fundraisers online. We've had some cabaret online. We've got improvisation going on online. We have different produced videos that are out and happening. We're lucky that we've been able to create original content for the last 25 years that we've been around. And with that, we have some good video on that. So we've been able to house that on Vimeo and stuff like that. And we're really just trying to keep connected out there. We have a Met Connect series, which is basically testimonials from different company members and different artists that have worked with our company over the years to talk about the impact that the Met has had on them. And so we've been doing 3 of those a week for the last few weeks, and we're planning on running those as ad nauseum, and to try to keep it going, keep our name out there, keep people connected to the organization. We've been able to help with making over 1,000 masks so far. With our costume shop and with different of our ensemble members and different people connected to the company. So we've been able to help doing that, but it's been tough. You know, you walk in the space to go pick up something because nobody's really in the space, and it's sad that the space is empty.
I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure that's true for a lot of businesses, institutions, schools, colleges, you know, you name it, the ghost town effect. It's sort of like the pictures you see of, you know, the streets in New York City or something like that, or college 2 days after graduation.
Right. Meanwhile, we're still doing top college classes online.
Oh, that's right.
And still meeting with, you know, about monologue coaching and things like that. So that all still goes on.
Well, you are keeping busy. but in the end, it also takes, the financial support to keep something like this going. And I think a lot of times people don't appreciate fully how many people are associated with something like the Met, like these other production companies. It's not just a director and an actor once in a while. It's a lot of other people, and promotion and staging, well, everything really.
And we're building community. I mean, we're connecting with each other, and theater people in general are touchy-feely people.
Right.
We like to be around people. We like that group dynamic. We like to go to dinner together and hang out together, and so we've been able to do that a little bit virtually, but it's not the same.
Well, I know none of the three of you are introverts. So, Christine, why don't we jump to you? How are you doing? How are things going?
Well, okay. I'm actually finding that I'm more introverted than I ever would have thought, because emotionally, I think I needed time off, and I was kind of, I took 2 weeks where I couldn't just rest. There's so much to do when you're in a crisis, especially as a theater artistic director, like Tad mentioned. But I found I needed the rest, and for 2 weeks I was a little introverted, but now I'm back to longing for people, being an extrovert. I will say that the timing, there's no such thing as perfect timing, but the timing was especially bad for us with COVID. Kind of similar to what Tad said, we were in the middle of producing. We do a lot of actively staged readings, but we only do a couple of really big productions a year, and we were in the middle of 21 actors we had a play, The Awakening, that was opera and jazz and New Orleans music, original music, and it was actors, singers, a music director. We were all working very hard, and we had to close in the middle of rehearsals. We could not finish, and just as Tad had said, we also closed before the call came because our actors were nervous, and a lot of us live with seniors and vulnerable communities, and we wanted to just stay careful. But our show was to run April 9th to the 21st, and of course we had to spend, as most theater people know, about 80% of what it takes to produce a show you have to spend before you get anything back. So that was a pretty big dramatic loss for us, not being able to do the show in April. And we also only do one fundraiser a year, and it was set for May 4th at the Delaplane. So that was another huge loss. So I feel like we've lost about $20,000 in a month, and that's just the reality. And you pick up and you move forward, and we're also impacted because we have a Shakespeare festival, and honestly, I do not think we'll be open in time to rehearse and get it up. I do not know if Hood College will even want to open up.
That?
It's July, but we'd have to be out rehearsing in June, and or maybe early July.
Well, we don't know how things are going to be in July anyway.
We don't, but and it is outdoors, but I do think theater is going to be the last thing they bring back. I mean, time will tell, but I don't think they're going to, I think it's going to be a slow come in, just from what I've been hearing and seeing and reading, and I don't think big gatherings are going to be the first thing they let out, but we'll see. And of course, since we don't have our benefit and we don't have our box office from The Awakening, it may not even actually be doable this summer because of financing. It does take money to produce a show. But that's okay. And we're still gathering in, we are having some Zoom meetings and some Zoom get-togethers and things like that. But as Elizabeth and Tad will say, and as Tad said, the very nature of theater is having audiences and people and gathering and the scenes touching and feeling. We're very lucky though, because we will be doing one thing, not to tell you what we're coming up on, but on May 4th.
Feel free to.
On May 4th, which was our benefit night, we, a friend of mine who's a playwright in New York is bringing back a play that was kind of documentary style, interview style, that was about 1965 to 1970. College campuses and the whole protest Vietnam combination. And so they're going to be doing that play from New York to California, and he asked me if we would host a reading. And so I'm excited, and thank you to Elizabeth, who introduced me to Shelley Lynn Walsh, who was my Patsy Cline. So her and her boyfriend, both Broadway actors, are going to perform in it, as well as local talent. So we
I'm
have
excited
that,
to
but
see
it's
that.
free.
Yay.
It's, so it's exciting, but it certainly won't bring in any of that lost revenue, and that's
No.
okay, because we're
Well, those are two separate issues,
exactly, and we had just signed a lease, as well as with the Frederick Arts Council building to be our home, and so we have a home, but it's not quite the same as what Tad's going through with a huge space in the base. We have that in the Frederick Arts Council's very, very accommodating and understanding, but we also had that. Sorry, my thing is a little shaky, my
it's okay.
computer.
We know you're not having an earthquake. We're close enough to feel the same
I promise
thing.
you
I
I'm not. But
So,
that's basically the general of where we are now and what we're just about to do.
okay, thank you. Elizabeth, how about you?
Yeah, Free Range Humans was right in the middle of a transitional spot anyway. We had our last production was in October, and it was a immersive Jekyll and Hyde, and we learned a ton from it. We loved this production where the audience was on their feet following the action through our venue, and I think it was so successful, we sold out every single performance plus some, and so we want to keep exploring in that direction. And also looking at the economics of that and wanting to be sure that I keep paying people minimum wage so I can say that, we're a professional theater and we pay our artists. I'm looking at the economics of that. We took a little time to move to a not-for-profit model. I was just on a free-form LLC, so we're in the middle of starting our LLC, and also wanting to establish an education base with free-range kids. Putting free range kids in the mall, it's basically just a big empty room with a stage and a dance floor, and it's specifically there to be accessible to people who might not otherwise walk into a theater building. We're building it in a way that's very open so that when people walk by, they can see what's going on and be intrigued and try things. And so those two we were right in the middle of a pretty major redirect. In terms of both the back end structure and the front end of what we're presenting and how we interact with the community and with audiences. So timing, terrible in many ways because we were going to open April 1st, but I'm grateful that we didn't open. It would have been worse if we had been open for a month and then had to close. And I'm also very grateful to the Francis Scott Key Mall, who is not charging me rent until I can actually open.
Thank you to them for that.
Yeah. Yes. Otherwise, it'd be a non-starter. It would just be over because I had a ramp, but not a long one. So I'm counting blessings, and at the same time, losing gigs as a director because my shows in other places are being canceled, which was income I was counting on. And so I'm juggling between knowing I can still open if I can keep my family afloat until that day that I can open. And I am a little bit bullish about end of summer for something outside. Especially since the show I'm going to direct in August is probably going to be canceled. I want to talk to Christine actually about maybe moving the show I was going to do into August and doing it as a concert so that people can be socially distanced and still enjoy this incredibly heartwarming and warm and healing piece of theater that I just think is something all of us need right now.
I've wondered about that, how just the logistics of, not to mention the economics and everything of it, might work to have some audience type events happen in a partial way with people, like a Redskins game selling only 1/6 of the seats, or a theater outside with social, how much of that will be possible, how much of that will be allowed, how, I assume most of the audiences at, theaters like yours would be conscientious and well behaved and wear masks, and but what's going to be possible and what's not. One thing I did want to ask you guys about is, theaters come in a lot of different forms, permanent companies, for-profit businesses, nonprofit organizations, various mechanisms for funding. How does the different complex model of this sort of business effect, based on what you know so far with the federal stimulus and the other aid packages, questions of unemployment or keeping businesses whole? Have any of you had to deal with that or made an effort to, or found there are unique challenges to that as theaters?
Well, I can speak a little bit on being a new organization in the sense that we also just got our 501c3. We were fiscally sponsored before that, and we hire all independent contractors, artists for a short period of time. So we don't have staff. And as a person who doesn't have staff and W-2 employees, we are not eligible for any city, county, or Maryland state aid. That said, the federal government did allow for the PPA, Paycheck Protection Loan, but they also made you average it to an entire year. And if you've only been paying people on these little tiny spurts and they spread it out and average it by a year, you don't get nearly what you actually were paying people. But I do have to say we're very grateful to Frederick County Bank because they helped us through that process, and we did get some funding there so we could pay like our teaching artist who wasn't able to teach.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was very exciting.
You're the only success story I've heard.
Well, small, you know, I bank locally for a reason. I just do.
Good for you.
And so do others. I'm not saying that, but they were very good and helped me figure it all out, because some of it I was like, they say that if you're a nonprofit, you can apply, but they're asking for, you know, and if you just only do independent contractors, but they're asking for a 940 form, and that's for W-2. And he's like, we kind of have to have it. So I had to fill out with all zeros a form to the IRS so that I could have a copy to put in there. But, you know, they helped me work around that. And I also I reached out to everyone who was in the Awakening and said, I'm happy to give you a letter for the unemployment office to say that we hired you for the Awakening that we could not perform, so that you have a piece of paper that shows why you are not able to work, for that at least be peace. And so a lot of the performers asked me for that letter. And of course, unemployment, you know, give it another week for independent contractors, it was a nightmare. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it sounds like it's
forward.
kind of been a nightmare for most people, just on the sheer volume and administrative demands, given the way that they set it up and implemented it.
Yeah.
You know, Tad or Elizabeth on that?
Yeah, you know, with how transitory I was, I'm just not eligible for anything, not a thing. I mean, there are a few independent artist grants that I am eligible for. I want to thank the Frederick Arts Council. I did get a small grant from them. I want to thank the Prima Theater, who had to cancel my show but sent me some grocery gift cards for Wegmans. You know, there are little things that are coming through, but I'm also very lucky that I have video editing skills and coaching skills and website building skills. So I'm kind of leaping into gig work while I'm also trying to keep my theater company running to feed the
Yeah, we have a managing director and administrative staff. So, you know, our immediate reaction was that everybody needs to go on unemployment while we figure out how we can pay people without having an income. Then with the government stimulus, the Paycheck Protection Act that came through, we were able to rehire all of our staff at least through middle of July, but we don't know how long that's going to last. As far as our individual artists, we've been able to help connect with them with some individual artist grants, as Elizabeth mentioned. And we've been able to try to partner them with a little bit of work outside of you know, the normal purview of being an actor or teaching artist. So, you know, we're trying to keep people interested, keep them excited, but it's tough when, you know, the big projects aren't there right now.
Right. The, you know, obviously working with actors, you don't use the same people in every play. They're not working with you all the time. Some people just do one, some do others. It's not your direct responsibility for all their other time. Many of them work other jobs, etc. But you're connected to them and you care about them and they're part of your life and your business. Have any of you had just a sense of how the people in that kind of, you know, situation are dealing with the problem? I mean, I would imagine there are a lot of part-time workers, gig economy people, things like that. Are you finding that they're doing okay, that they're finding ways to deal with this?
Some are really struggling.
Their friends are, you know, they're not going to have food. You know, there's the shortages in New York for people who have been making a living in the theater for decades and suddenly have no recourse or income is staggering.
There's probably a lot of people in New York too.
Yeah, a friend of mine in New York was on a gig and it got shut down. And so, I mean, he was instrumental in equity to kind of help equity pay actors for a few weeks that they were supposed to be working. But then his mother passed away in Baltimore of this.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I find that my friends are experiencing, you know, at first people didn't likely know somebody who was infected. Then they might have, or maybe a few. Then they didn't know anybody who'd been, you know, killed by it. Now people are that's, you know, changing, and the number of people that I know who've had close relatives, you know, dear friends, coworkers who died is starting to go up, and it makes it all hit home so much more.
And I just got to say, I know your audience probably isn't going to think this way, but there are people out there that don't even think that this is real.
Oh, I know.
Conspiracy, and just know that this is really happening, and that people are passing due to this, and that you know, this is not something made up by Bill Gates to put a chip in your body. Okay, please just do the research and trust science.
I appreciate you making that point. We could definitely have a whole long show about that. It's frightening, you know, the amount of denial that seems to be happening and growing. I mean, it's legitimate to have different ideas about how to move forward or how to reopen or things like that. But you know, some of what you've been seeing out there on social media and other places is frightening. So in an effort not to have this be too long a discussion, before we wrap up with you sharing any links, any ways that people can help, take a moment, you know, in whatever order, to just share any additional thoughts or ideas, the concerns that you might have with the audience. You know, we hope this will reach at least a few hundred people in Frederick County, most of whom perhaps are folks who care about, support local theater. What would you like to say to them?
I want to say that so many of us in this time, whether we're conscious of it or not, are leaning on the arts to get us through. Whether we're binging on Netflix or streaming, you know, the Phantom of the Opera sequel, whatever you're watching, these are things made by artists, and it's a community that if it were not thriving, you would have nothing to get you through this time. And I think the arts, and especially theater, which is so community driven and group driven, is uniquely positioned to be a healing force once this is all over with, once we are able to start coming out of our shells again. I know I am thinking very consciously about what I'm going to launch with once we're able to do things again, and making sure that it's that I'm serving the community and the needs and the sort of psychological trauma that all of us are going through.
Thank you. Well said. I appreciate that.
I also just want to say to everyone, we miss them so much. And I know we talked a little bit about artists in New York and stuff. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the artists in Frederick are suffering too. I know quite a few who are in panic mode. I personally was in panic mode for a few days there, you know, just like, oh, how are we going to do this? How am I going to do this? And there's a whole lot of people who are sharing with me how panicked they are. But even beyond that, so if you see an artist online or whatever, send them a hello, send them a thinking about you. And please know we miss the audience. We miss the people so much. It's how we live. We miss them.
And I would say that, you know, I know some people have received a stimulus, and it wasn't very discerning as to where those were going and what was going on with that. You know, there are quite a few people out there that are still working at their exact same schedule that they were working before this all happened, whether they're essential workers or whether they're in the government, or there are plenty of, I mean, there are contractors that are still working. And I would just say that, you know, if you are still on that that regular work schedule and your income hasn't changed, but you still received a bump from the government, please consider donating that to one of your local organizations. Any of the organizations, the arts organizations in particular is what I'm going to ask for, of course, but you know, the Health and Human Services, or I mean, there's Way Off Broadway out there, which is that Other Voices theater company, which is still you know, a company that is not running right now. Way Off Broadway, which is a for-profit dinner theater, but they still had to close. So please consider gift cards, consider making donations to those organizations as well.
I appreciate you mentioning some of the other theaters and companies in our community. And it's true, there are many people who have financial security with or without considering their current job, or have it because their current job is not at risk or has not been so far. I encourage people recently on Facebook, and I'll put the plug in now, to, you know, contribute a week of what they spend on groceries on a local food bank. I mean, think in terms of how you normally spend your time. You know, we're all of us who would normally go to the theater or participate in the arts or go walk around to art galleries on First Saturday, all these things we're not getting to do, and the money we would have spent doing it, we can still use that wherewithal, not only to participate in some way, but to help out.
Yeah,
So in wrapping up, if each of you could just share if there's any contact information, again, anything that's a phone number or URL, we'll also put it on the website so people don't have to remember it. But how can people help? What can they do? How do they find out what you're doing right now? For example, Tad said there's a lot of old content and some new content online. Let people know about that.
Yeah, if you go to our Facebook page, also our website, marylandensemble.org, has a lot of information. It has links to our videos that are on Vimeo and YouTube. And our phone number is 301-694-4744. But our staff is skeleton right now. So the website, and through that you can get our email, which will contact us to anybody on staff.
And you put a bunch of old plays that you had videotaped up there for a nominal fee. People can sit and watch an entire performance.
Right, we have an original comedy, we have an adaptation of Frankenstein, we have a community production of Robin Hood, Occupy Sherwood, we have one of the family theater companies, A Tale of Two Trolls, and we're getting ready to put up kind of historic sketches through the Comedy Pigs up there too. So
you can help the Met in that way and enjoy yourself at the same time. So it's more than just a contribution. Christine?
Well, you can reach us at our website, which is test-p.org, test for the Endangered Species Project Theater, the Endangered Species Project Theater, test-p.org. I'll send it to you so you can put it up.
I will.
And also, we have a Facebook page as well. And on our website, we also have a section called Fun, where our performers are sending, and we change it every couple of weeks, they're sending like monologues that they've done and things like that. So you can kind of see, we're featuring two a week, so you can go and look at that. And again, on May 4th, we're going to Zoom a show called Days of Possibilities. And because it's a interview type documentary from real people who lived through it play, it zooms a little bit better. I hate to say it, I'm not a huge fan of Zoom theater, just because I miss the connection between the people and being each other.
It's not theater, it's a completely different thing.
Exactly. So, and I also just wanted to shout out because I very much thank you, Tad. Thank you so much for counting the other theaters involved. And just because Fredericktown Players, we can't think of them all at every minute of the moment, I wanted to shout out to them too. So if they're on your radar, also think about them. I'm sure they're struggling.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth.
We have a Facebook page, Free Range World, facebook.com/Free Range World, and we also have experience-human.com. We are fiscally sponsored at the moment, so donations are tax deductible, and we'd be so grateful for them because without some donations, we won't be able to reopen. So we're spending our time prepping, and there will come a time when I will call for volunteers to come help me paint the space. We got kicked out before we could finish getting the space ready, and that'll be a great sort of entree to start, building things back up again.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for
Can I
participating.
say one more thing?
Yeah,
I'm so
please.
sorry. I forgot to say
problem.
the reading that we're doing, we are not as technical savvy as the younger group. And so we partnered with Quarantine Theater Company, which is a group of young, just sassy, great people who they're going to help us technically make it happen. So I just wanted to throw them out because that would be rude for me to act as if we're doing that all by ourselves.
No problem. I appreciate that. You need some technical support, find some young people.
Exactly.
But thank you, all three of you, for participating in this. You know, I hope it's helpful to get a message out one more way about another important element in our community that is affected right now. I know I miss, I appreciate your point, Christine, about you guys missing us, the audience. But those of us who are regular audience members are missing a lot of things that we normally do. As Tad said, it's the social environment, it's music and dinners, but it's the cultural elements, the plays and art galleries and other things too that are just absent from our lives mostly right now. So let's hope we all get through this. I wish you all the best of luck. I'll put up the links with the video, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Kai.
Thank you.
Okay.